What is a director? And what exactly does he or she do other than shout at the actors? Well, it's not exactly a role that can be described in a few words, as it varies greatly and can be extremely complex. Foremost, it requires a large amount of skill in negotiating and collaborating with other departments, to orchestrate all of the creative heads together to create that final film. In a sense, the director needs to display the leadership skills necessary to lead an army. But this is not to be confused with the role of a producer. It is ultimately the director's vision that is seen on the screen. Researching the role of the director, I saw that they had to be involved in practically every aspect throughout the filmmaking process. To simplify things, here is a brief synopsis of what is expected of that director. During pre-production, heavy involvement in the script writing process including rewrites. Break down the elements of the script and work out a shooting schedule. Search for locations and match up the logical requirements to the shooting script. Attend auditions and cast the actors. Hold a cast read-through of the current script to see if it flows as well and time it. Hold constant production meetings with the team, equipment, props, costumes, scheduling, etc. to ensure that everything was ready for when production starts. During production, primarily make the film. Work closely with the actors and ensure that they understand their characters and what is to be expected of them. Work closely with the cameraman and cinematographer to convey what kind of shot is required so they can set up the tone and feeling of the scene. Work with the sound engineers to make sure that the correct audio is recorded. Go through the rushes each day to check that the correct image has been captured. Arrange reshoots if required. And then during post-production, work closely with the editor, visual effects designer, and the sound technicians during the editing process. Work with the composer to agree on the music needed, and attend press tours to help with the marketing of the film. To this end, successful directors tend to have an ability to visualize every scene and shot required. This helps them to direct the individual departments to create the look and feel of the costumes, props, scenes, and effects required during pre-production. When asking directors what important function they play in the movie, you'll get mixed responses. Some would concentrate on the structure of the script to bring out the beauty and narrative of the dialogue used. To some, it's the actors and their portrayal of the characters that bring out the story, emphasizing subtle gestures and nuances in their performances. To others, it is the camera work that brings out the pictorial beauty of the film. Or it's the editing process. Regardless of who you speak to, all films are made individual by their directors. This is what makes them magical. It is the vision of the director that can make or break the story. To better highlight a director's role, I've chosen to look at the style and techniques of two of Hollywood's most influential directors, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. I was fortunate enough to be at the right age when they took Hollywood by storm and introduced the world to an epic space opera. A lovable alien. Visitations from other worlds. A rugged hero in a battered hat wielding a bullwhip. And a seriously annoyed shark.
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
Through these films, the two of them managed to change not only Hollywood, but cinematic history as well. Although Spielberg has won 189 awards, surprisingly only 3 of them Oscars, I shall be mainly concentrating on his earlier work, as I feel that they held a unique feel to them when compared to his more modern masterpieces. Spielberg started his career in 1969 at the Universal Studios, directing the short film Eyes, which was part of a TV series called Night Gallery. Not only was this his first professional job as a filmmaker, he also found that his cast included the film legend Joan Crawford. But even at this early stage, one of his unique styles began to formulate: the invisible one-shot, where information is delivered to the audience without having to cut.
You have more than most.
But I'll talk more of this later on.
All there, I believe. Do you recall the young woman? Miss Grace Reardon, age 22.
Other signature styles would start to show in his made-for-TV movie Duel in 1971, in which he had only 10 days to shoot it.
First of all, I didn't quite know how I was going to achieve this in 10 days. They were giving me 10 days to shoot about 73 minutes of film with commercials that fills out the hour and a half of the ABC Movie of the Week format, where Wally Worsley said no one could have done that film in 10 days. We wound up shooting that in 12. I went maybe 13. I went 2 or 3 days over schedule on that, which made the studio not very happy, but I was getting good stuff.
The antagonist's POV and intimidating low-angle shots, along with the use of mirrors to enhance the story. But it was his 1975 film Jaws that would catapult his genius to stardom. He took the premise of what would normally be categorized as a B-grade horror movie, normally associated with drive-in theaters, and turned it into not only the first summer blockbuster, but the highest grossing film of all time, hitting $470 million worldwide. The unique blend of his filming style along with John Williams' haunting score captivated the audience's imagination and caused a generation to fear the sea. Spielberg managed this by changing the genre from what would have been a straight horror to one of adventure, drama and thriller, opening up the market to target a much larger audience. It was during the editing process with acclaimed editor Werner Fields that Spielberg and Werner decided to not show the shark in full, instead to only allude to its presence using the shark's POV, John Williams' score and selective shots. This was due to the animatronics that were used to create the great white did not like salt water and quickly received the moniker a floating turret. Jaws introduced the world to Spielberg's unique style. Every scene he filmed is filled with pure cinematic technique that he learned through studying not only the Hollywood classics, but combined those techniques with other film movements, such as the French New Wave.
So what I need is a red zone. It's a simple thing you can take care of.
Honey, would you come here a minute, please?
His visual trademarks that not only made the movie so successful, but also marked him as an ingenious director, were travelling shots that followed the actors horizontally.
Look, I reported to you, didn't I? You live here? No, Hartford.
Simple pans from a fixed camera covering fast action.
Can't get a good man these days not under 60. All gone.
Constant change in the staging of his actors.
5-year-old.
Mr. Quinn!
Women.
Mr. Quinn!
Mr. Quinn!
Emerging faces into the frame, looking past the camera.
I'm talking about finding a great white.
Orcas.
The actor and camera moving towards each other at the same time.
Just tie me a sheep shank.
And facial reactions to off-screen action. Ironically, Spielberg's most recognized scene in Jaws was actually a technique created by Hitchcock.
I'll stand by you.
Lastly, Spielberg's famous invisible long take emerged, whereby moving the camera and actors around during a single take, Spielberg was able to give the impression that the scene was done over multiple shots. In this scene, the movement of the ferry, the constant change in the background, and movement of the actors gave the effect of a wide shot to a mid shot to a close-up to a wide shot again, all in one take. The success of Jaws pretty much gave Spielberg an open checkbook for his next movie. So he turned to an idea that he had developed back in 1973, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Once again, Spielberg took a B-movie premise and turned it into cinematic magic. The genre of science fiction up to that point had always portrayed aliens as invaders of Earth.
Nella casa del Signore, in eterno.
Instead, he decided to turn it on its head and have them as mysterious visitors, wanting to reach out to the common man.
See what the hell they could be testing up there.
Using the studies of ufologist J. Allen Hynek, Spielberg changed the genre of science fiction to science fact and drama, incorporating a documentary style to his film.
Over. Roger, Aries 31. Continue to send at your discretion. Over.
Okay, Center.
The story followed the exploits of Roy Neary, as well as that of a shadowy government organisation led by a French investigator named Claude Lecoun. Interestingly enough, Spielberg approached one of his idols from his film school years to play Claude Lecoun, François Truffaut, acclaimed French New Wave filmmaker. When asked about his choice of actors, Spielberg said that as much as he admired Truffaut and his films, he felt that Truffaut had a childlike look to him that removed the scary demeanour currently beset with government officials. He wanted to bring out the wonder and magic of the situation.
That's not crazy, is it?
Spielberg also understood the importance of lighting. Without showing anything other than shadows, lights and reflections, he managed to enhance the tension and fear with mere suggestion. This is also another area that soon became a signature of his films, a clean, white light. Close Encounters is also the first film in which Spielberg shows his unique ability in directing children, but I'll let him explain how he managed to capture this reaction.
I dressed up our makeup man as a gorilla, and I dressed up another character as a clown, and I had them in big cardboard boxes. So when he came into the room, I didn't tell him, I just said, you have to come in and stop right on the line. He almost looks down at his mark, actually, when he comes in, because he was so obsessed with stopping on the line. And he stops. Then I unveiled the clown. At first he was scared first, but he looked at it and began to slowly smile. And then I signaled for the box to be taken off of the gorilla. He took a step back, and he gets completely... And then I whispered, take off your head. And the makeup man took off his head, and Carrie saw that his friend, the makeup man, was inside the gorilla suit, and then the smile erupted. And that's one take. You can't do that twice.
Upon release, Spielberg found that he had another global hit, this time with a box office gross of more than $300 million. Meanwhile, during the making of Close Encounters, Spielberg's friend and future collaborator George Lucas was working on a film that would forever change science fiction films. To me, George Lucas was not so much a director, as more of an innovator, creating the world's greatest visual effects company, as well as the most successful franchise of all time. Having already made a name for himself with his earlier film and surprise hit American Graffiti, Lucas wanted to revisit his childhood days of the Flash Gordon serials and revitalise the flagging science fiction genre with his own children's tale of science fantasy. He decided earlier on that his new film, The Adventures of Luke Starkiller, as taken from the Journal of the Willows, Saga 1, The Star Wars, would move away from typical Hollywood spaceships that were always sleek and futuristic, instead making them old, used and lived in.
What a piece of junk.
He also quickly realised that the current visual effects that were available could not accommodate this vision. So, employing a group of young enthusiastic people, he created a small company called Industrial Light and Magic, to solely work on the effects needed for the newly titled Star Wars. Little was he to know that this company would soon become legendary to the world of filmmaking. Unfortunately, creating new technology meant that there are a lot more misses than hits. In fact, with only 9 months left before the film was due to be released, they had only managed to succeed on one effect shot. On top of this, the shoot appeared to be besieged with disasters, sets destroyed by freak weather, injuries to actors, and falling behind on schedule were only a few of the problems he encountered. George Lucas was an independent filmmaker, and initially didn't want to get involved with Hollywood movies. His approach was more hands-on with the technical side than to his actors. Because of this, he didn't develop a distinct style like his friend Steven Spielberg, other than the classic Hollywood swipe, which was no longer used. Where he excelled, though, was through the characters he wrote. An innocent farm boy, a rugged smuggler with his hairy companion, a beautiful princess, and 2 comedic droids. He also created Hollywood's greatest villain in Darth Vader. George Lucas also succeeded in directing the visual effects shots, using them to shock and awe the audience alongside John Williams' most famous score. In the opening scene, he purposely had the Empire ship fly slowly over the audience, dominating the scene, building up the children's excitement for the oncoming battle. He gave the ships personalities, much like he did with his cars when he was younger. He based his space battles on old World War II footage.
I'll be right there.
And of course created the famous lightsaber. On the 25th of May 1977, Star Wars instantly became the biggest film ever to be made, shattering the box office record Jaws previously held, with $775 million being made worldwide. Hollywood couldn't believe that in 2 years, 2 directors with 3 films had managed to make over $1 billion in gross sales. It was unheard of and forever changed the face of Hollywood. Knowing how Steven Spielberg makes his movies, I can see how every element he places on screen, his mise-en-scene, helps enhance his vision, creating strong emotions within the viewer, vesting them in his film, caring for his characters. He is a director who studies the script and unearths the soul of the film. No matter how fantastic or amazing the story is, he will always look into the heart of the characters and highlight their humanity. In his 1982 film, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, one technique he employed was to use low-angle cameras so that other than Elliot's mum, you never got to see an adult until the final act of the film. This was to give the viewer a child's point of view and to sympathise and ultimately fall in love with E.T.
She thinks she could get well again if children believed in fairies.
In the early days, I feel that Spielberg was very much an auteur-director. Some would argue that he collaborated with John Williams and so couldn't claim full authorship, but I disagree. He, as a director, chose Williams to score his films because he wanted the music to be an emotional link to the story. As much as he changed Hollywood, I feel that in the end, Hollywood changed him. Regardless of his successes, early Hollywood never really respected him as a real director. They felt that he chose commercialism over style, not realizing that he had found a magical chord that could take an adult back to his childhood and fill it with adventure. Now, when you look at his movies, you can't fault his genius. He managed to combine classic Hollywood styles with new age filmmaking flawlessly. As a young boy watching his early films, I desperately wanted to live in suburban America, experience that childlike innocence he so expertly portrayed, and sit out under the stars, hoping for a shooting star to land near me.